Jake Paul is... I feel like he can explore more of the Venn diagram of the opponents that he's willing to take. That's my main thing about him. Is that, like, they're all in the Venn diagram at some point of it, between can't strike at all, much smaller than him, or super shot.
Yeah.
But like they're all in the super shot part.
Yeah.
I feel like he can branch out. He could fight some tiny wrestlers who are in their prime.
Yeah. Bring in Ryan Hall, you know?
Mm-hmm.
They could just be smaller and bad at striking. You could probably take them at this point.
Maybe even the same size and bad at striking if they've never struck before.
Possibly, yeah. That's true.
That would be pretty ambitious.
I mean, the thing with Jake Paul is he's not terrible at boxing. He's not good, but he's not terrible.
Huh.
And he showed good fitness, and he is presumably on all the best steroids money can buy. So he could probably do it.
Yeah. Fight a tiny wrestler in their prime.
Hello. Welcome to Heavy Hands. I am your host, Connor Rebush. With me, as always, is Phil McKenzie.
Wow, this is a particularly stilted intro today.
I don't know what's wrong with me. Hopefully it's not whatever is wrong with the man that we're going to be talking about very soon. That being Vicente Luque, who is featuring in next week's main event, dubiously, I would like to say, against Rafael dos Anjos. You know, you look at this card and you look at the top, and if you know no context and no details, you're like, okay, cool. And then you see one other fight with two names you recognize, two strikers' names you recognize, and you're like, oh, all right, okay. And then you look further down the card, and something compels your eye to drift to the right side of the Wikipedia page. You start wondering, almost unwittingly, where is this event taking place that they... Oh.
Ooh.
It's the Apex. No wonder it completely vanishes in terms of quality outside of the top one or two fights. Last week's card, on the other hand, could well suffer a completely boring main event, like Cory Sandhagen versus Rob Font, because there was a gate the UFC had to worry about. And fans show up because they want to see certain fighters. And that's what draws people in, and you want to have the crowd popping and going wild, and it's always refreshing to hear that when it happens, and this was no exception. You also want to hear the crowd going crazy and booing during bad fights, apparently. But yeah, we're basically sandwiching. We're getting a lot more live events in the coming months, I will say that. For whatever reason, probably the UFC has worked out more scummy deals with corrupt athletic commissions like they did in Salt Lake City. But they're going places, and as a result, it is no accident, a lot of the upcoming cards look really good. So we're gonna have fun things to talk about going forward. But I think this is going to be a bit of a depressing episode, if I'm honest.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we're coming off Font Sandhagen, which wasn't a bad card.
No.
Which had a pretty dismal main event. And yeah, this has a fight which would have been amazing at almost any other stage, like a year or so ago, or 2 years ago, and now feels a bit like it's a bit of a glue factory competition. Also, speaking of live events, is there a particular reason why Vicente Luque versus RDA? I mean, I guess it's because they have to have a headliner for Apex events, and it has to be someone that people have actually heard of. Is there a reason why this couldn't have been put on the Brazil card? This belongs on the Brazil card. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not a main event, because neither of these guys have been doing particularly well lately.
Yeah. I mean, RDA's been doing all right.
It's a perfect, like, Brazil co-main event.
RDA's been doing all right. I mean...
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, he fell significantly from being a champion, but considering the sort of stagnant level he seemed to have come to rest at for a while after that, he's been doing pretty good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but he's, at lightweight, he is a perennial contender. At welterweight, he is a considerable step below that.
It is absolutely true.
At this stage in his career.
Yeah, and even before. I think even when he was champion, if he'd gone up, that a lot of RDA's success at lightweight does depend on being huge and strong. Mm-hmm. And that just he is one of these people who sits right at the perfect point of the weight cutting spectrum, that he is a big lightweight and a small welterweight.
He's a very good fighter, which means he's been quite successful at welterweight.
Of course.
It's clearly not his best division.
Of course.
And one that he's at because presumably he just doesn't want to make the weight anymore because it's really horrible for him.
I wouldn't even say doesn't want to. I mean, maybe he just probably can't do it he's 38 years old.
And I think he just wants to end out his career in relative comfort.
Sure. I mean, like Robbie Lawler said after his retirement, right? He knew it was time to retire when he was just not able to enjoy training anymore. Mm-hmm. That was his cue. And RDA probably not cutting weight, I would assume still enjoys training, still enjoys what he does. And the fight is really just and its result is really just a small part of his overall experience as a professional fighter. I've never cut weight myself, but I can't imagine it makes training more fun. So, props to RDA for continuing to be good. The thing that we have danced around here, and we are going to get into the fight, but this one for me, it is in fact impossible to discuss in any kind of technical or strategic sense what we expect to go down without sort of understanding what is going on for both of the fighters, and in particular Vicente Luque. Because towards the end of July, it came out that Luque had been brought to a special hearing by the Nevada State Athletic Commission. Typically, I understand, they sort of approve or medically clear fighters in just big sweeping stacks, right? They get a bunch of papers on their desk, and they're like, okay, approved. They don't even read the names, whatever. They're corrupt. And a broken organization. But with Vicente Luque, they were concerned because following his loss to Jeff Neal, Luque was hospitalized with a brain hemorrhage, which is I should hardly need saying, life-threatening injury, and a particularly troubling one, not only for any competitive fighter, but for one who routinely finds himself in complete slugfests. His brain was bleeding. And I personally don't put a lot of stock in the Nevada State Athletic Commission's approval. Knowing how easy it is, for example, for a person to go and get a medical marijuana card with whatever invented malady they can come up with. I don't think it's that much more difficult for fighters to go and find a doctor who will clear them. You can shop around.
Famously, we've had Bisping who fought with one eye, or fighters who have fought whilst they were pregnant, or
gee, that happened. What was that?
I forget who that was. But yeah, it was
Jesus.
Someone important in the UFC. We've had Cain Velasquez, Big Nog. I think Big Nog was also half blind, as well as obviously being an absolute walking corpse who could barely move. I share your skepticism. I don't trust the athletic commissions at all. I mean, apparently they have done some extra due diligence, which is why this fight was moved backwards by a month.
But, And they did a special hearing, but all of this is just sort of the hand-wavy shit that I associate with, like, giving the appearance of doing due diligence. Mm-hmm. You know, like, at the end of the day, the Nevada Commission, and all the commissions really, are beholden to the big, powerful sanctioning organizations, or the big, powerful promotions that bring fights to their states because their state gets money from that. And they are incentivized, even if they weren't, like, openly corrupt, which they are incentivized to allow the promotions to, like, Dana White has fucking power slap going on. He doesn't give a fuck about fighter safety. The organization of the UFC doesn't give a shit at all about fighter safety. Like, eventually a UFC fighter is gonna die. We're going to see something absolutely horrible happen in the cage. That's a certainty even if all due diligence is done. Because it's fighting. But it just gives me a very sick feeling in my stomach, honestly, to talk about this fight knowing that Vicente Luque, who I'm sure wants to continue fighting, I'm sure he can't imagine himself doing anything else. And in that sense, you know, I guess die in... I'm about to quote Denethor from the Lord of the Rings movies. I just realized. Go and die in whatever way seems best to you.
Yeah, I think that's something that people say but don't actually mean. You know, no one. People say that, you know, people say that they're ready to die doing for what they love because they don't think it's going to actually happen.
Of course, yes.
Yeah, it's very worrying.
It's very worrying. Yeah.
No, if we think of all the fighters who have had careers cut short by brain injuries.
Yeah.
TJ Grant being the famous one. And in many ways, I'm glad we didn't get to see him again because he was he clearly wasn't ready to come back.
Yeah.
So I don't know. In some ways, the only thing you can do is hope that the doctors were competent.
Yeah, that's not a lot for me to hope on, to be honest. I don't know how much you know about the American medical system, Phil, but yeah. As with anything else in this country, there are some scam artists in that field.
And also that just like brain injuries are horrifically complicated, and
yeah,
I doubt that anyone really knows.
Yeah, and I think
whatever this comes down to, it is almost certainly a bet hedging exercise.
Yeah, and truly
hedging with someone's life on the line.
Truly, it is the last injury I want you to have if you're fighting. I cannot think of an injury I had. You know, you fight like Cory Sandhagen did last weekend with a fucked up elbow, and the fight sucks as a result. At least you're probably really no much worse off for having fought with an injured elbow. Your brain, on the other hand, yeah. So it really makes me sad that this is happening at welterweight with welterweight RDA, because all of this leads me to say that I really wish that he would just out wrestle Luque. You know, and just choke him out, armbar him, something that doesn't affect his brain. I suppose there are worse guys that Luque could be fighting, but I also have to say, and I think many people will agree, Luque looked bad in his last fight. He has not looked good for some time now, in fact. It's sort of those fights like he had with Brian Barberena, like that seemed to immediately have an effect on Brian Barberena's ability to keep fighting that way. It took a little longer for Luque, but it does seem that all of these wars are catching up to him. He seems slower. He seems easier to hurt. He just seems overall more ponderous in his positioning and his strike selection. Like he seems like he's going through the motions out there in a way that he didn't before. He was never a fast fighter per se, but he was like really accurate and really locked in punching exchanges. And what I saw over and over again in the Jeff Neal fight in particular was a guy sort of just throwing pad combinations on autopilot and just being absolutely shocked when the other guy punched during his turn. Like, that is not what I want to see out of Vicente Luque. of all fighters. So
yeah, he is someone who has basically ridden his ability to put out more dangerous offense than his opponents.
Yeah,
throughout and be able to take what's coming back at him, but essentially throughout his entire career.
Yeah,
it's made him an incredible action fighter, a main card mainstay. But it's also, one of those styles that just clearly isn't going to age that well and doesn't look like it is aging well.
No. Yeah, and it is, I mean, another thing that I couldn't help but notice is that Luque seemed to have real troubles with the southpawness of Jeff Neal, who was one of the most southpaws to ever favor his southpaw. Super left-hand dependent. I mean, terrifying as it is to know what happened as a result, I still cannot help but laugh at the finishing sequence of that fight where Jeff Neal throws approximately 49 left uppercuts in a row without even once thinking of the fact that he has a right hand too, or hitting the body or anything. No, just left uppercuts to the head. The shot he continually caught Luque with was the left straight. And Luque, the irony is that in the first round, when he got hurt like 4 times and knocked down at least once, he was doing the most depressing version of my coach told me how to fight a southpaw. He said, don't jab, I've ever seen. Because he was just trying to walk Jeff Neal down. It was a particularly right kick heavy fight from Luque, which, he's always been willing to kick, but clearly somebody had told him, he had Joe Rogan in his camp. That open side kick is going to be more effective for both guys. He threw a bunch of those and it was effective, and he entirely eschewed his jab and seemed completely obsessed with keeping his lead foot outside of Jeff Neal's, and was rudely, not awakened, but you know what I mean, whenever Jeff Neal just fired a left hand down the middle is the moment he stepped outside his foot. He was like, what? This is supposed to be when my right hand lands, but it's a matter of timing. But the problem with that being your only tactic, or the heart of your strategy against a southpaw, is that to step outside your opponent's lead foot, you have to square yourself up. You have to give them your whole center unguarded, and if the other guy's ready, he is just going to sting you first the moment you square up. That happened to Luque again and again, and then ironically, after getting his shit rocked for the entirety of the first round, Luque came out more relaxed and his autopilot seemed to revert to what he would do against anybody. And namely, he started jabbing, and it resulted in a massive shift in momentum. Like, even just equalizing would have been a massive shift in momentum considering what happened in the first round. But no, he started to wear on Jeff Neal and make him uncomfortable, and started really effectively pressuring him. And I think very arguably won the round. Maybe not. Still ate a bunch of clean left hands, but put himself in the conversation for having won a round because he remembered that he had a jab. And I don't think he was capable of doing that until he got knocked out 8 times in the first round. So that's troubling, I think, against RDA, who is famously a southpaw.
Yeah, I mean, Luque's fought a bunch of southpaws, and it's hard to say that he's done well against any of them.
Yeah.
I mean, Michael Chiesa, I guess.
Yep.
But he wasn't actually doing very well in the striking in that fight.
No, he was not.
It was a lot of Chiesa circling the cage and Luque being not sure exactly what to do. He did land a big sweeping right hand that knocked Chiesa down, but I don't think RDA is just going to be aimlessly skirting around the perimeter of the octagon. And 2, as you said, Michael Chiesa was landing several like clean left hands down the middle on Vicente Luque.
Yeah, Stephen Thompson beat him largely as a lefty. Of course, he switches stance. He did beat Randy Brown, who changes stance a lot too. But I don't think of Randy Brown as a particular like southpaw tactic merchant, or really a merchant of any consistent technique. Randy Brown just sort of thinks of things as the fight goes on. That's why he's so fun to watch and also so frustrating. But yeah, I mean, and to be
Brown is also an extremely low kickable man.
Yes, that too. But yeah, Stephen Thompson had tremendous success as a southpaw. Granted, he had tremendous success as an orthodox fighter too, but Luque just clearly had a lot less idea of what to do when he was lefty. Leon Edwards definitively beat Luque. Yeah. Most of the guys that are southpaws that Luque has beaten, it's either because he just like one-shots them, or in the case of Chiesa, opportunistically submits them, or there is another asterisk in the form of them being like infamously inconsistent or fragile or something, like Chad Lepree's switches stance. And yeah, notably Jeff Neal, Bilal Muhammad used southpaw a lot, super effectively against Luque, Stephen Thompson, Leon Edwards. All these guys with like very clear southpaw strategies really kind of took him to school. And I think his game just doesn't function that well against lefties because, like John Lineker, Luque is a massive hook throwing puncher, who because of that people tend to overlook how important the jab is to the functioning of his game. As a pressure fighter, as an aggressive counterpuncher, having a stick that you can use to corner people and catch them when they sidestep you. He did that to Jeff Neal a lot in the second round of that fight. Jeff Neal tried to skirt out to the right as Saif Saud was just screaming at him nonstop to do right flank. And he pierced him down the middle with the jab when he squared up as he had been doing to Luque before. And also, yeah, to draw out the opportunities to land those counterpunches. That jab is a really important part of Luque's pressure and aggressive countering game. So I expect his striking to look a little janky against RDA, if I'm being honest. Not that he's not dangerous, etc., but I do expect his striking to look more disjointed than it does at its best, let alone the fact that he sort of looks washed.
Yeah, we haven't really seen many body kickers, but also just at a fight, fighting Luque, mostly people are like, Jeff Neal is basically, as you said, he's a left-hand high kick.
Yeah.
But he's a big proponent of the double forearms guard. It's hard not to see RDA just tucking a left middle kick.
Bilal Muhammad did that
a whole bunch.
Bilal did that very effectively. The southpaw left kick to the body it landed every time he threw it.
Mm-hmm. And that's, A, the Cordero Classic, and B, the RDA Classic.
Yep.
Yeah. I think I'm curious to see whether RDA wrestles him, because that's a much different proposition than I think it would have been back in the day. I think that was really Luque's weakness back when he was first in the UFC, was that he was a miserable defensive wrestler and was far too willing to play guard. But that he has genuinely shored that up. He's still not the world's greatest defensive wrestler.
I think it's coming back, much in the way it has for Stephen Thompson. Jeff Neal took him down like twice. Bilal Muhammad took him down. Michael Chiesa was the one who got the takedown. I'm pretty sure that Luque got the submission.
Yeah. He took him. Chiesa got rocked, then took him down, and then got doused in the scramble.
I kind of do suspect that RDA will find some opportunities to take Luque down. I just think he's slower to react, and has never been a fast fighter, as I said. And so, yeah, just that little loss of margin. It does seem that people are having an easier time just Like, the takedowns that he's been getting hit with are ones where he doesn't even begin to defend. Like the one Stephen Thompson has been suffering, where it's like, oh, you're just not quick enough anymore to even notice that the takedown is coming before it's already done. It's a troubling sign to me.
Yeah. And, it's always possible that RDA gets KO'd by a bigger man up a weight class, but RDA doesn't look like he's chinny.
No.
He got shocked by Rafael Fiziev doing what we now know is essentially his last burst of energy when he's super gassed.
Yep. Yeah.
Did exactly the same thing against, not super gas, but when he will always come out and suddenly try and explode.
Yep.
Late in the fight, as we saw against Gaethje.
Yep. Otherwise, RDA was doing quite well in that fight.
Mm-hmm. And it's just the thing that Luque is slow, and RDA, despite being smaller and weaker at welterweight, is going to be faster. He's going to be harder to...
And much older, and yet, yeah.
Yeah. Has RDA ever been... RDA's never been knocked out at welterweight, has he?
I don't think so, no. Fiziev got him, Alvarez got him. Those were lightweight fights.
Yeah. Yeah, he took a horrendous beating against Usman.
Yeah.
And Edwards, for that matter. And, just... never looked like he was even that badly in trouble.
It's true. I think the weight cutting probably and the speed probably has a major effect on whether or not you can knock him out at all. Jeremy Stevens, the Clay Guida one was an injury. Otherwise, it's Alvarez and Fiziev, and they're both 155ers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Luque is obviously a huge puncher, but it's really hard to favor him. It would be hard to favor him in their prime, I think. Would be much closer.
It would be.
Just
in their prime.
Just the physicality, I think.
Yeah.
Would make it much harder to call.
Yeah, and I would also expect Luque to bring out more of RDA's worst habits with nonstop pressure.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point.
That is obviously stylistically should be a thing in Luque's favor, but I have not seen him been able to pressure people as consistently. Like, Bilal Muhammad just matadored him for the better part of 5 rounds. Yes, he still landed shots. He's still dangerous. Luque, or Neal rather, who does not even have particularly good evasive footwork, really, was just able to interrupt him and run him into left hands and occasionally takedowns, and he really slowed Luque's roll. There are doubtless still going to be some long stretches where RDA is kind of finding his timing and is giving in to his bad habits and just, Edson Barboza-ing his way out of the pocket and letting Luque pressure, but he's got the out of the wrestling. He is an effective straight puncher. He's got a southpaw jab. And at any point when Luque isn't able to press forward, he is going to be susceptible to the full RDA arsenal, which includes the wrestling, and I do think it'll probably be effective. So, I have to pick RDA. I just have too many concerns about Luque. Like, I would have concerns about him if I didn't know this troubling medical detail. I would have been I was already thinking that he was clearly starting to fade or was losing some motivation or again, that little athletic margin that made him capable of being effective. And now knowing that there are much worse things going on as well, I just don't have a good feeling about this fight for Luque.
No, I just hope he makes it out of it safely.
Me too.
Whatever happens.
RDA, just wrestle him and arm triangle him, please.
Yes, please.
Arm triangle this man. Yep. Okay. Well, that is our unfortunately very depressing main event for next week's card. I wish we could just, it's a useful reminder that you should probably always be a little bit depressed and morally aware of what's happening when you're watching these fights, but doesn't really feel like this one should be sanctioned, if I'm honest. So with that, let's talk about something more fun. Cory Sandhagen. versus Rob Font, last week's main event. We're going to touch on that after this. Hey everybody, thanks for listening to this week's Heavy Hands. If you like what you hear, please consider pledging to support the podcast on Patreon. Patreon is basically continuous crowdfunding. You sign up to contribute a certain amount per month to help us with production costs and the like, and in return you get rewards ranging from a mention on the Heavy Hands website to a question or topic of your choice being discussed on the show. We have a lot more in the works to reward you for your help, and we appreciate every contribution. No amount is too small. Just head over to patreon.com and find how you can help out, the only show dedicated to the finer points of face punching. Now let's get back to it. Welcome back to Heavy Hands. We are talking about last week's main event now, Cory Sandhagen, Rob Font. I think I can say that this was an extremely impressive performance, which was not fun at all to watch. Is that fair? Yeah. Wrestling sucks. We all agree. To be honest, like, this was the kind of one-sided wrestling match which I was actually enjoying watching it live. It is I could get things out of it, and I could appreciate intellectually why it was playing out the way it was. I certainly don't hold it against Cory Sandhagen. It is a fight that I will never ever rewatch. I mean, unless I have to for research or something. And I'm only going to watch it in snippets and skip through a lot of what happened because it has zero, like, genuine, heartfelt entertainment value. Is that fair?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's just another very impressive strategic showing from Cory Sandhagen.
And technical. I mean, I noted last week on the Vivisection with Zane that Cory Sandhagen's willingness to wrestle and his awareness of how to mix that in and how to work off of that threat has been very effective and impressive, but his outright wrestling technique has not been particularly effective. And in that regard, I would say this was a significant upgrade. Because Cory Sandhagen was hitting every round, almost every round, where he just swamped Rob Font on the ground for 4.5 minutes. The takedown that got him there was pretty beautiful, like perfectly timed, better level changes than I've seen out of Sandhagen in the past. Excellent finishing technique on the single legs. I mean, I consider that a real step up in Cory Sandhagen's actual technical wrestling repertoire.
Yeah, I mean, he's just a fighter that continues to just improve every time out, which is remarkable, really.
He is a genuine student of the game.
Yeah, I saw him talking beforehand about how he was basically saying, I think I'm going to win this fight fairly easily. I will be disappointed in myself if I don't. And to be fair, he was right.
He was absolutely right. Yeah, and apparently part of the strategy, too, according to Cory Sandhagen, had to do with an elbow injury. I can give him a small pass for that, too. I know he's talked about that in the past. That is like a recurring chronic injury for him. So, yeah, I mean, I did the ultimate pathetic nerd thing on Twitter, unlike all the other cool things I do on Twitter, and made a chess comparison. I've sort of, I've sort of Bruce Lee'd myself into being a more annoying type of fight fan. Where it's like when you begin,
you'll be the one who's like, you've gone from being everything, you've become everything you hated.
Yeah.
In that, it would be people saying, this is a real chess match here. Like, that's not a chess match.
Yeah.
It's a stupid fight. And now you're the person who's going to be like, you know what this was like?
Yeah.
Actually,
this was like
a chess match.
This was like, or as I call it, the royal game. Yeah. I'm like that bell curve meme, at the very beginning.
Yeah. The
chess match.
He's like, it's a chess match, and then in the middle.
Yeah. Please. And then I finally achieved enlightenment where I can look at a fight that sucks.
Was in fact a chess match, yes.
I can look at a fight that sucks shit. and be like, you know what? Yeah, the comparison I made was that, two of the most exciting attacking chess players in history, Mikhail Tal, or I think it should be pronounced Mikhail Talia, and Paul Morphy, the first great chess player, really, were just crazy attacking, gambiting, like sacking all their fucking pieces. I mean, this isn't going to be badass to anyone who doesn't like chess, but Mikhail Tal famously said something like, yes, all my pieces are hanging, but you can only take them one at a time. And if you like chess, that is a very badass thing to say. And if you don't, it's really lame. But I said that these two crazy attacking players, they also slowly squeezed an opponent to death every now and then. Like, sometimes that's the fight you're given. That's the dynamic you find yourself in with your opponent. And you're just like, well, I'm winning. I know how to keep winning. I'm going to do that. And I think I don't think you can fairly, like, fully blame Cory Sandhagen for this fight being dull. Because what happened is he upgraded his wrestling game, no question. And he found that he was able to take Rob Font down with ease. And he was, in positional terms, being quite aggressive from top position. He was trying to create posture. He was trying to pass. He was trying to smash through Rob Font's guard. He kept sticking him in that really uncomfortable looking, like, half butterfly guard where Rob Font's elevator was just completely crushed by Sandhagen's hips. One of these, like, sort of in-between half-passed positions that have become so common and are so obviously effective in MMA when you can threaten with strikes from them. And Rob Font played really excellent defense. And this is why it was essentially a stalemate. Where I think if this was a 10-round fight, no question Cory Sandhagen would have finished Rob Font. You know, he was crushing him progressively more with each passing round. And with each minute, he was getting to better positions. He was delivering more damage. He was wearing down Rob Font's defenses. But Rob Font was put into a familiar position, which is, you are losing. Do you want to lose? Do you want to continue to, like, be solid, essentially, and just lose normally? Or do you want to burn out going for the win? And Rob Font was not able to come up with a way to flame out and just force, complications on Sandhagen and make the fight really double-edged and risk losing badly. So he just lost normally by being solid and defensively sound, except for the wrestling defense. But I can't really fault Cory Sandhagen for that at all. Because, like, you know, he was crushing. Like, what was he going to do? He was going to, like, throw away a winning strategy because the opponent was, like, just repeatedly not doing quite enough to stop him from winning? No. And again, if there were 10 rounds, I mean, God forbid, I would not want to see even one more round of this fight. But if there were 10 rounds, I have no doubt that Sandhagen would have found a way to finish Rob Font. It was just one of those slow squeeze positional kind of fights. It happens.
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, this was just the way the fight kept. I mean, and in some ways, you know, this has to be something that you can criticize people for, because in the same way that you don't necessarily want to see the same exchanges, you know, there's a criticism that we have of a lot of fights where the same exchange plays out on the feet over and over again. Yeah. You don't necessarily want to see the same exchange playing out on the ground over and over again either.
Exactly, yeah.
You could see that there was a sort of valley that the two of them were falling into repeatedly.
Yes.
Which is that Rob Font was trying to play an aggressive guard game, trying to work to half guard and then sweep from there. And then Cory Sandhagen was trying to be aggressive from the top, but every time he was doing that, Rob Font was grabbing his punching arm and attempting to do something with it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you know, successfully, Font was able to, I think, Kimura sweep him at one point, which is very nice and very pretty, and probably not the kind of thing he should have been looking to do with any kind of consistency. But you could see that he was continually trying to do something. So what this basically meant is that Sandhagen was not able to inflict much damage.
Right. Both guys were navigating serious threats. Like, yeah, really, it was two aggressive approaches that completely neutralized each other because neither guy was willing to let the opponent's aggression just succeed, which why should they?
Yeah, there wasn't any, Nurmagomedov-esque baiting of the attack from Cory Sandhagen, nor was there from Font any kind of idea that he should do something else.
Right.
He should start, trying to get double underhooks or a butterfly, go for double butterflies rather than sneaking out one side, something like that. He just kept trying to go to sort of his same things. And, that's something we talked about Rob Font being someone, that's kind of what he does as a person. Both of these guys, I think, in their own way, are developmentally solid fighters. Mm-hmm. Rob Font is someone who I think we've talked about as just being incredibly coachable, but not particularly
adaptable.
Yeah, his coaches basically download things into him, and then he will go out and do them.
Yeah, they were desperately trying to get him to change course.
Yeah.
In the fight, and he just kept doing the same things every round, and getting put into the same positions, and yeah. But I feel like
Sandhagen, it's really impressive to be someone who was primarily a striker, and then just out-wrestle a very highly ranked opponent.
Yeah, not even like a strong power striker, like a flighty volume striker.
Mm-hmm.
And just
Ricky Simone. Ricky Simone couldn't beat Rob Font.
Right.
Cody Garbrandt tried to shoot in on Rob Font.
Mm-hmm.
He's not super easy to take down. The size of Sandhagen obviously made a difference. His timing, his ability to pull the jab out from Font and then shoot under it. All this kind of stuff probably made a difference, but you really don't see that kind of change in a fight very often. And then to win a fight entirely with what is nominally their secondary skill set.
Yeah, and really, not really to this shocking degree, and fortunately not usually this boring, but this is a pattern with Sandhagen that we have already noted several times, that he is pretty remarkable as an elite fighter for his ability to just continually add stuff and sort of transform his game based on previous fights. And this was almost the most stark example of that yet. Because, again...
for sure. Because it's one thing to add tweaks, and one thing to do things like change the directionality or the, stop spinning, or, or doing weird stuff. Any of these kind of small changes. But as I said, just to beat an elite fighter who has beaten good opponents in this, as I said, Ricky Simone couldn't beat Rob Font.
Right.
He's a famously pretty good wrestler.
Yeah.
To be able to do that is you just don't see it very often. The last person I can think of who did that was Leon Edwards, and that was honestly that change was much earlier on in his career. He started being Leon Edwards the wrestler fairly soon into his UFC tenure, I think.
Yeah, I wouldn't even say it would be fair to say that he was a fully formed fighter yet.
Mm-hmm.
Sandhagen has been looking like a finished product for years now.
Yeah.
And he is still introducing new aspects to his game. And as I said, this is not the first time he's been using his wrestling a lot, but it has been useful before in the way that a lot of Sandhagen's techniques are useful, as a piece of a chain of techniques. Something to threaten.
It's to catch people off guard.
Exactly. Something to threaten, something for them to think about. If he can get somebody down, he will absolutely take top position and try to work it, but it has never been so singularly effective as it was in this fight. And I think a lot of that just comes down to him. His timing was flawless. His finishes were really good. To be fair, I think Rob Font, who did accept this fight on short notice and didn't seem prepared for a wrestling approach from Sandhagen, did a particularly bad job of defending the takedowns. I think that's fair to say.
And I think, due to who Rob Font is, I think he is probably just not well suited to being a short notice fighter.
Yeah.
Because he needs his coaches to just, as I said, put stuff into his head for him to execute.
Yeah. But yeah, this was just I can't really hate on either guy. Like, I want to say if you're going to criticize either of the fighters, you should be probably more fair to criticize Rob Font. Because again, if you're like, especially when you get to the fourth round, like, you're losing anyway. You should give the guy your neck, bait him into attacking so that at least some chaos can happen. Because that's the only way you're going to win at that point. You're not going to suddenly catch him with the submission that he has been easily deflecting, and not even allowing you to turn into a sweep for the better part of 20 minutes. So you really the onus is on Font at the end of a fight like this to take a huge risk, to take a series of huge risks and just try to make the fight crazy enough and maybe he could win. But I don't even really feel inclined to criticize Font. Like, short notice, as you said, I think he's a fighter who just characteristically just struggles to adapt on the fly. And I'm glad you pointed out that this was essentially two quite aggressive approaches. Both guys were in there doing their version of trying to finish the opponent. It's just that those two approaches just deflected off of each other.
Hmm. And yeah, as impressive as Cory Sandhagen is, there's a limit to how many things you can add into your game plan over time, and an elite top game is clearly not one of them.
Yeah. His top game looked fine, and it was working. Like, he just easily won the fight with an injury he took an opponent on short notice too.
Yeah.
At a different weight from what he was originally contracted for. So.
Yeah. It's hard to be able to ask someone, like, you won this fight, it was super dominant, you should have won more dominantly, you should have finished it.
Like, I get it. You see a fighter winning, you want them to take it to the next level and put a stamp on it. I get that. It's not, but you can't hate on the guy for not doing that. He just won the fight. He just beat a good opponent completely dominantly. I'm not going to
ask from any fighter, really.
Yeah. I'm not pretending it wasn't boring.
Do stupid things that, try and win in the best way possible.
Yeah. I'm not pretending it wasn't boring. I'm not using the chess match thing the way Joe Rogan does to somehow dupe myself into enjoying a dog shit fight. It wasn't fun. I get that. I enjoyed it in a very intellectual remove live, and I've already said I will never enjoy it a second time. It wasn't a good fight, but, I say props to Cory Sandhagen, props to Rob Font for doing the best he could on short notice. Whatever. It happened. It happens. It's over. All right. What do you say we take another break? When we come back, I think we're just going to do a sort of a grab bag. Next week we have one other good fight. That is Cub Swanson versus Hakeem Dawodu at featherweight. And there were quite a few other interesting things on last week's undercard as well. Tatiana Suarez returned to strawweight, got a win over Jessica Andrade. My boy Dustin Jacoby, beautiful first round knockout of Kennedy and Nzechukwu. I did not see that coming. There are quite a few things to discuss, and I think we can touch on basically whatever we feel like after this.
Financial support is fantastic, but there are other, even easier ways to support Heavy Hands. Perhaps the best is by spreading the word. We know our fan base. You're all cool, popular people with serious social media presences. You're tastemakers and trendsetters. Okay, there are one or two of you that don't fit that description. You know who you are, but no matter what, you can always help us out by telling folks about the show. You can also give us a positive rating and review on iTunes and Stitcher, things like that. We rely on word of mouth and positive feedback to grow and improve, so thank you very much for your time and your help. Now, back to the show.
All right, welcome back to the show. Let's do next week's. We're going to make these, to the degree that we can, pretty quick breakdowns. We've got Cub Swanson, Hakeem Dawodu as the co-main event of next week's otherwise shockingly dull card. This one looks interesting. I mean, it's two strikers. Cub Swanson is clearly aging, has clearly passed his own sort of like athletic barrier, being a guy whose style was always pretty dependent on physical traits. But for all that, he's still getting some wins out there. He's still out there competing with people now and then. He's taking on a much younger fighter, much closer to his prime, but who nonetheless got completely trashed in his last fight by Julian Erosa, of all people. I remember that was a pick I got just comically wrong. Not that there are a small number of those, but...
No, I'm not saying, like, yeah, you got that wrong, you idiot. I was like, why would I pick Julian Erosa to win that?
Yeah. I suppose, if you're not going to knock Julian Erosa out in the first round, you better cross all your T's and dot all your I's as a technician and a strategist in the feed, because otherwise he is just going to bring it to you and make you supremely uncomfortable. It's one that in hindsight doesn't feel crazy. Like, watching it play, I was like, okay, Dawodu wants like a pretty slow-paced, considered fight. He's not super high output. He's not super low output either, but he wants Dawodu is a fighter who thrives in a simmer. And did not enjoy fighting somebody who was big, who put a lot of pressure on him. But anyway, one thing I cannot help but notice, Phil, is that people seem to be having a great time just kicking the shit out of Cub Swanson these days. And that seems like
a very literal sense, you mean? Right?
Yeah, like actually. Well, not literally the shit. He hasn't had
but they are actually kicking him, yes.
Yes. He has not had a Yoel Romero-style mishap as a result of the kicks. But he has had a lot of other more obvious mishaps. People have been kicking him in the leg. Jonathan Martinez finished him with leg kicks. Giga Chikadze finished him with the body kick. I don't think that was the first time that happened. And Daniel Pineda fucked him up badly with low kicks as well before getting knocked out on the counter. So of the last 4 opponents he has fought, only one of them was Darren Elkins, which Cub Swanson obviously won. Everyone else has been a wide array of different styles, all of whom have had massive success kicking him from range. And that, I have to say, does seem like a bad quality to bring into a fight with Hakeem Dawodu.
Yep. There is obviously like a world in which I can see Cub Swanson absolutely replicating what Julian Erosa did. All he has to do is essentially a Superboy fight.
Yeah.
If he just comes forward, throws tons of punches, keeps Dawodu constantly backing up and uncomfortable, and just refuses to be, it's a very kind of, there's a little bit of Elkins to Dawodu, and that, he's poised and he's ready to throw, and so people don't want to throw. But like once he is moving backwards, he is, as Erosa saw, you could just kind of pour the offense on.
Yeah.
You could.
Mm-hmm. Go on.
There is some version of Cub Swanson you could 100% see doing that. Do you know how long ago this Korean Superboy fight was?
I'm afraid to find out.
It is almost 7 years.
In my head, I was like, 5 years seems long enough. 7 years ago. Goodness me.
And let's not forget, like, what the narrative in that fight was, which is, and I don't know if Cub Swanson has it anymore against someone, a young, dynamic athlete like Korean Superboy.
Yeah, which, props to him. He got mad about that and made it happen.
Yeah. I mean, even then, Cub was clearly lost a step.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, Erosa didn't just swamp Dawodu in pressure. Huh. Another thing that was so shocking about the performance was, like, he was really effective with his jab. Like, it was probably the best boxing performance I've ever seen out of Julian Erosa.
Yeah, I mean, he slipped a ton of shots. He landed, like, the counter left hook a whole bunch.
Yeah.
Yeah, he made Dawodu swing at air.
Yeah.
I mean, he also, got hit cleanly in the face a whole bunch of times because he's Julian Erosa.
Yeah, that's going to happen.
Yeah, that's what happens. But Yeah, you could see there was effective defense mixed with offense going on. It was a genuinely really good performance from him.
Yeah, and countering and combinations, and I have to think a large part of that was the size. That I think Hakeem Dawodu was clearly uncomfortable with the size difference. And also the fact that Dawodu's response to that was thinking that he could get into the clinch, where the size was also a factor. Dawodu's not a bad clinch fighter, but Erosa just got to him first every time that they connected, basically, like hockey punched him to death.
Yep.
Hit him on the brakes.
Roasting him from the clinch. He did something similar against... what's his face? Charles Jourdain.
Yes, true.
Jourdain was like, I have my safety zone of the clinch.
Yeah.
After I've been throwing my crazy combinations, and Julian Rose was just like, no, you don't.
No. Yeah. Of all the places to be, honestly, the clinch might be one of the least safe places to hang out with Erosa, because his striking can be a little ponderous at range, but he is definitely one of these fighters who just knows exactly what to do when one of his hands is already in contact with your body. It's like, oh, I know where to throw my punches, and he has no qualms about throwing a lot of them. And knees and everything else. But yeah, I mean, this would, even setting aside the notion that the size was a major factor, to replicate that element of the fight, I would have to trust that Cub Swanson still had his jab, which was an inconsistent part of his arsenal at the best of times. You know?
When was Cub Swanson's jab has at this point been gone for like a decade, right?
Yes. Yeah, the last time I can remember him really dominating a fight with his jab was, I don't know, I mean, he was pretty effective with it to some extent against Artem Lobov.
His best jabbing form,
you know what?
Like Jeremy Stevens, right?
He was pretty effective with it against Shane Burgos. A very close fight, actually.
That's fair.
Against a particularly ponderous and square opponent who is just begging to be jabbed at all times. But, yeah, it would have to be jabs. I would have to expect Cub Swanson to be out there throwing combinations, which was a huge part of Erosa's success, was just insisting on having the last word in exchanges. Dawodu is a fighter. As I said, he wants a simmer. He would very much like you to respond to his counter punches as if it is the last punch of the exchange. Ouch. Step back. He's like, okay, I can take a breath, reset. He's comfortable. Erosa, even when he wasn't being insanely aggressive, which again, he was at points, but even when he was like countering and fighting from range, he was firing 3-4 punches really consistently whenever Dawodu threw at him, and it clearly gave Hakeem serious pause. I don't really trust Cub Swanson to do that either. I mean, again, I think he's a fighter who has finally passed that threshold of where he can continue clinging to what's left of a prime with his physical abilities, and as a result, both his technical game and the sort of creative athletic game that complemented that seemed to have faded. I'm not saying he can't be sharp in moments, you know. Obviously, he was against Daniel Pineda. It was a very impressive KO. But these moments are fewer and farther between. So I'm going to take just straight up the younger man, assuming that Cub is not going to put enough pressure on him, is going to be too much of a one-and-done puncher, and otherwise is going to get kicked to the legs and the body a lot.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I think Swanson was actually quite aggressive against Martinez.
Well, after he got his leg kicked to shit already. I mean, he had to be.
Yeah, I mean, right from the beginning, I think. But it was just the fact that Martinez was simply damaging him.
Yeah.
I just couldn't stand up to his shots in the same way that Martinez could.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's a weird example. Like, Cub is definitely someone whose technical prime really coincided with his physical prime.
Mm-hmm.
Because as his physical gift faded away, he went back to what he was more comfortable with, which was being a wild, crazy person. Like, he fought more like an athlete, once he started to fade, than he did when he was at his technical peak, when he was at his physical peak, which is a weird thing to happen. But yeah, if you consider it to be, the technical stuff to be something that he really added into his game late when he was, training at boxing gyms and so on, you can see why he just went back to being, big shifty punch man. Going southpaw and then throwing the body.
The most obvious, I only switch stance to do one particular thing fighter I can think of.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, you're looking at someone to fight a physical young man's game and someone who I don't think can.
Yeah.
I mean, as I said, I was really worried about Cub Swanson where he was physically, and he fought Superboy 7 years ago.
Yeah.
These last, you look back at his fights and you're like, a war with Kron Gracie?
Uh-huh.
Knocking out Darren Elkins? None of this looks promising.
Yeah.
And that it's very easy to see, it's very easy to, and Daniel Pineda, I guess, was a good win and an awesome fight, and Pineda is still a relevant fighter in the division. But at some point in a fighter's career, the years get longer, basically.
Yep.
Even that fight was 3 years ago.
Yep.
And at some point, if you look at any good to great fighter, or even most fighters, they get to a point in their careers where there's you can draw a line where it's here's a year's difference between when they were a good, competent fighter and then they were just completely, utterly shot to pieces.
True. It hasn't happened that dramatically with Cub. I mean, I do think Cub is...
That's what I'm saying. I wouldn't be surprised. Wouldn't be surprised. I think the Jonathan Martinez fight, it's rewatching it, it's better than I thought in retrospect.
Mm-hmm.
But it was also just if I look at this... in terms of the aggression, his willingness to go after it, his willingness to throw in combination, but also I just don't trust the trend.
Yeah, I mean, Cub is and was a special fighter, for whatever that's a very frou-frou kind of phrase, but in a way that Hakoum Dawodu never was and never will be. Cub has it, he has that ability to come in clutch. When he really, really needs to. He, at numerous points throughout his career, has just absolutely gone berserk and gone for it when he needs to, and at times he can be technically brilliant when he needs to. Cub is a fighter I think we should and will remember very fondly as just a great fighter.
Uh-huh.
But I'm just not feeling him in this one. I don't know. The stars could easily align. Dawodu he can be really inconsistent. He's never as aggressive as you would like him to be, even though he's never actually as low output as you think he is. There is just this feeling of him needing a lot of pauses, a lot of thinking time. That's sort of, even in fights that he's dominating, he allows the margins to be quite close. But, I don't know. In particular, it's just hard to see so many people having such huge success kicking the hell out of Cub Swanson and not look at Dawodu's fast, powerful kicking game and think, it's probably going to work.
Yeah. And the fact that, as well as TKOing Cub, Martinez almost finished him on 3 separate other occasions.
Yeah, he rocked him with a knee as well as busting his leg up. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think he got him with a knee. He knocked him down with a head kick.
Yeah.
He might have hit him with punches. He might have knocked him down with punches as well at some point.
Yeah.
But, I mean, every which way. And Martinez is a dangerous fighter, but he's not that dangerous.
Yeah, that was the kind of fight I look at that makes me realize a fighter has finally gotten old. Or as you said, he's doing a lot of good stuff, and it's just not working. Just keeps getting rocked. Things just keep going wrong. Okay, couple of quick hits here maybe from last week's card. Tatiana Suarez. We were all anxiously awaiting her return. She's now, I'm pleased to see, back at strawweight. I guess the flyweight return fight was just to kind of get her feet wet. And certainly I think it looked like the size makes a difference for her at strawweight. That being said, I didn't think she looked that great. Again.
No, I didn't really think. Yeah, but both of them, I felt this was one of those ones where I felt I was looking at diminished versions of both fighters.
Yep.
I think it's a style matchup that I would pretty much always favor Tatiana Suarez in.
Yeah.
Almost no matter when they fought up in any point in which they're in their careers in which they were both relevant MMA fighters, because obviously Andrade has been doing this a hell of a lot longer than Suarez has.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, she's just a physically powerful, aggressive fighter with a wrestling game, and Jessica Andrade is just not a technical grappler in any way. She's just big and strong.
Yeah, and not that big, really. She's strong, but you can see in a
she's
fight
big for women's strawweight.
Yeah, but Suarez is bigger.
Yeah.
Suarez is a massive strawweight.
It's gigantic, yes.
Yeah. And I think that you could see how that had an effect. And boy, Suarez is just such a cumbersome striker. Like, every single entry was awkward. On the breaks in particular, like, she just kind of flails around and backs up in a straight line. And, like, if she did not have the ever-present threat of a level change, she would probably out there getting hurt a lot more often on the feet. I mean, I also...
Back when Suarez, before her injury layoff, I was just like, this person is a future champion.
Right.
I am less sure of that now, to be honest.
Yeah.
I just don't think she looks as able to enforce a pace as she was before.
Yep.
And like being able to out-wrestle Jessica Andrade is, well, A, Jessica Andrade has looked pretty bad lately.
Yeah.
B, she's Jessica Andrade. I mean, admittedly, the depth of wrestling skill at women's strawweight means that
yes,
there are, even a diminished Suarez could well
100%
get to the top of the division. Like, is Weili Zhang a good defensive wrestler? She is not.
She's not, yeah.
She's simply powerful and dangerous, much like Andrade herself.
Like Andrade, yeah.
But yeah, I'm less convinced that, like, Suarez is a nightmare matchup for everyone apart from, the now long gone Joanna Jędrzejczyk than I used to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I would be interested to see her fight. I think it makes sense. I think she should fight Mackenzie Dern.
Oh, sure. That sounds fun. Yeah, and Mackenzie Dern...
because we'd probably get an absolutely abysmal striking matchup out of it.
Mackenzie Dern just goes out there and angrily knocks her out. That would be funny. I mean, not that I want to see Tatiana knocked out, but it would be stupid. Yeah, she's got the ace up her sleeve. She's big, but she does just look very ponderous as an actual MMA fighter. And I don't know what it indicates that a takedown artist, top position wrestler has now gotten 2 wins by guillotine. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'll see one of these people defend it, and we will see that in fact Suarez has every reason to be confident in that choke. Like, a guillotine is not a foreign technique for wrestlers. A lot of guys who come in with wrestling backgrounds, that is one of their chokes of choice because they're good in the front headlock to begin with. And quite possibly, if we'd seen Montana De La Rosa or Andrade escape the guillotine, we would have seen that Suarez could have just used the pivot point of that headlock to just continue to escape bottom position and continue controlling. Maybe. But
it's not the best look though, is it?
It just gives me pause. Yeah.
Yeah, you want to be if you are a dominating top position wrestler,
I want to see arm triangles.
In a way which no one else, exactly. You want to see, exactly what I was going to say. You want to be arm triangling people.
I want to see arm triangles and rear naked chokes and give me a north-south choke now and then. I want to see submissions that come out of a dominant wrestling ride, or like a pin position, not you sacrificing position to get the submission. But again, it's not unusual for wrestlers to feel really confident going for the guillotine. And clearly she's got a good one. I mean, this was one where I thought it was funny. Dominic Cruz has now taken the Joe Rogan mantle of never being quite able to tell when a fight is or isn't finished. Cause he was just doggedly insisting to the end that Andrade was fine because Suarez didn't have her hands fully locked. And she was literally as Andrade was was tapping, Suarez was still adjusting and trying to get her grip fully locked in. But I was like, can't you see that the arm is completely under her neck and it's pinned to her own body and she's hipping up into it? So it is locked. You can one arm guillotine choke somebody just as you can one arm RNC somebody if you got the body position right and the pressure is on. I don't know. Maybe they had a bad angle. Anyway,
let's hope.
Yeah. Let's hope. Only other thing I want to mention, just because I like the guy, Dustin Jacoby, in the third fight from the top here, took on Kennedy and Nzechukwu. Jacoby has really impressed me as a UFC fighter. I think he is, like Jan Blachowicz, quietly just an actually good striker, not even entirely by light heavyweight standards. But just a pretty solid, well-rounded technical striker. And, somebody who checks kicks, also something he has in common with Jan Blachowicz. We love to see that. And he lost his last fight and so came in here coming off a loss against somebody who was riding a 3-fight win streak. And, I gotta say, Jacoby has looked good even in his losses. I mean, he had a fight with a really sharp version of Khalil Roundtree. He lost a split decision there. I thought both guys looked great. And then against Azamat Murzakanov was kind of my awakening on him as a fighter. Obviously, I knew nothing about him before except what I had watched briefly to predict their booking. And I thought Murzakanov looked awesome. And that Jacoby, was just super, super fast. That dude is a special athlete, was so powerful, was working the body, was doing all these clever switch-ups, and it came at the cost of him slowing down late, and that allowed me to still be impressed with Jacoby, who not only weathered a brutal storm, but just pushed his way back into the fight, as he often does. And so, I don't know. I wasn't sure how to feel about this. Nzechukwu is not a technically impressive fighter. He's honestly a mess, but he's huge. He's tough. He tends to just kind of wear on people. And I really could have seen that happening to Jacoby. And what happened instead is that he did put a ton of pressure on Jacoby, and this resulted in him getting beautifully knocked out, a little over a minute into the fight. And I really enjoyed this knockout. It was one of those knockouts that is clearly not somebody throwing their hardest punch, but rather just a perfectly timed punch. It was essentially an excellent slip counter, except the slip didn't quite work because Jacoby got hit. But the mechanics were there, and Jacoby, when that exchange was initiated, clearly knew what he was going to find. I've landed that shot myself before. Feels really, really good in sparring when you sort of draw someone off to the right. You feel the weight go onto your back leg and you just pop it out there. And it is one of those shots that if the timing is right, you can just hurt somebody completely by accident. I'm not very good. That has happened for me. You just accidentally buzz somebody because they're, and that's what happened. And Nzechukwu was stumbling in, completely squared himself up. This was another really good exchange. Unfortunately, in the replay, you only get one angle where you can see their feet. But I advise you, listener, to check that one out if you want to see the footwork associated with a counter right hand, because Nzechukwu comes in very much head first. He gets there with the strike first, but at the cost of bringing himself off balance and right into countering range, despite the size advantage he should have. And he does this. It's like a southpaw thing, a position that they end up in, and it is the southpaw E left hand that touches Jacoby from the typical outside foot position. And Jacoby knows his right hand is there, but to make it fall easily, he still has to adjust his feet to get his own foot outside, and he does that like as he is initiating the right hand. So you can see there's really nice little adjustment step. This is the mark of a seasoned and technical striker. This is a move you see like James Toney, maybe the greatest like counter right hand artist in boxing history. You see him do this all the time off the shoulder roll, where he will start in this really bladed position, and then the defensive move that initiates the counter, he squares up. He moves his lead leg outside and not even forward, like literally squares himself. And this is only a good idea to do when you're countering. You know the guy has already thrown. He's already committed his weight. Now you're safe to take that little chance, square yourself to line up the right hand. And as a result, Jacoby throws this just like effortless right hand. You could see it was one of these things where the impact surprised him. He just threw it very easily the way that you're supposed to throw your punches, and it had that little pop at the end, like that feeling of your fist sort of, it expects to connect with something solid, and instead it just sort of like tears through a piece of tissue paper, pops through the chin, and those are the most perfect punches you can land. So I thought the whole sequence leading up to it, the punch itself, really, really beautiful work by Dustin Jacoby, and clearly I like him as a fighter, so it was really cool to see him get a beautiful win like that.
He's a good fighter. You know, I think of him as being younger. We're both kind of... I think of him as being younger than he is.
Yeah.
But also, he's not that old.
Yeah.
It's a weird thing to say. Like, he's been fighting for a long time.
Yes.
Fighting since he was very young, but he is 35 years old.
Yep.
And yeah, he's he's one of those guys who has an actual like real kickboxing background, and it shows. Like
yeah.
he fought Alex Pereira back in the day.
Yep. Got knocked out by him, but that happens.
He made a perfectly good accounting of himself. He just got hit by an Alex Pereira left hand. It happens.
Yep. Left hook KO. You see that all over Pereira's record. Yeah, he had his MMA debut in 2010, and had a professional kickboxing career right in the middle there, and came back to MMA clearly the better for it. And he has been super successful in the UFC. I mean, this guy has been in the UFC now since 2020. And it's like win, 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 win. Couple losses in which he still looked impressive, and now he's back to his winning ways. I really enjoy him as a fighter, so that was good to see.
I mean, you could argue that he would have... that if he had been in, that he is for some reason, the striking-based light heavyweight who will never get main events.
Yeah.
Because he's just too generic-looking. But you could argue that he would have won all of them if he'd gone 5 rounds. Maybe not Khalil, maybe not Roundtree, because Roundtree had done quite a lot of attritional damage to him. That was just a nip-tuck fight the whole way through. But certainly, he won Kutalaba and Muzakhanov.
He's got a couple quick KOs.
Fights, he was kicking the shit out of them.
He's got a couple quick KOs. He can be tactically sharp right from the jump. Dominic Cruz, another weird thing on the commentary, seemed to think that Jacoby is most dangerous early. I don't think that's the case. He has shown many times that he is really, really gritty and very difficult to fully wear out and makes adjustments well. So typically the third round of a Dustin Jacoby fight, especially ones where he has lost early, he is winning by that stage. Yeah, he should be getting the Anthony Smith bookings. Enough Anthony Smith. Just Jacoby's better suited to 5-round fights and way more fun to watch.
Okay. Conor Rebush calls for Anthony Smith versus Dustin Jacoby main event.
I would watch that, okay?
Or the title of who is the new Anthony Smith.
If that's the only way he can get in, do it. Yes. I would like to see Dustin Jacoby beat Anthony Smith. I think he could do it for sure.
I also think he would probably.
Yes. Get him in there. He called out.
One thing being that he has been pretty much fighting other strikers at this point.
That's true. Yeah, although he dealt with. Granted, this is a mixed bag, but he did deal with Iwan Kudalaba's wrestling pretty well. It worked early, and then he adjusted.
Did he?
Yeah.
I remember Kudalaba beating the shit out of him on the floor.
He did for a round, and then he couldn't get another takedown for the rest of the fight, more or less.
Yeah.
Yeah, he had to adjust, as he often does. He's a slow starter who also occasionally just knocks people out instantly. Yeah, get him in there against Anthony Smith. He called out, very softly, he called out Volkan Oezdemir, which I would also happily watch. That sounds like a fun fight.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that'd be a genuinely cool kickboxing match.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, I agree. He should fight Anthony Smith, and he can become Anthony Smith.
I would prefer that to the old one, you know? It's the inversion of the "we've got Anthony Smith at home" meme. You know? Alright, that's it for this week's episode of Heavy Hands. That's a lot. I mean, there was a smattering of good fights, and the ones that weren't really good were, I think, still interesting. And that's always a good thing to have for this show, because God knows we love to talk. Next week, of course, we have this dog shit card, but immediately after that, I think we have UFC 292. Am I right about that?
Yeah.
No week between? Right, yeah.
Oh, I think it's the 19th. Yeah, it's right after that.
Coming up on the 19th, we get Aljamain Sterling versus Sean O'Malley. I will have an article about Sean O'Malley coming to Bloody Elbow. Tentative working title, Sean O'Malley, better than you want him to be. That also has Zhang Wei Li, Amanda Lemos for the women's strawweight title. We've got Chito Vera, Pedro Munoz. We've got Jeff Neal versus Ian Gary. I'm quite interested to see that. Unfortunately, Cody Garbrandt is also fighting on this card, and Chris Weidman at middleweight?
Oh, no.
No. When was his last fight? It was in 2021, and he's 39, and it was an instant leg break. No. Don't do it, Chris.
At least it's Brad Tavares.
Sure. Yeah, fair enough. God. All right. But
I saw someone on Twitter, he posted I think it was a highlight of Chris Weidman winning the title or whatever, and Chris Weidman retweeted it and said something like, yeah, this is amazing. No one knows how much, how incredible it can feel to reach the pinnacle of the sport. It's going to feel even better once I get that championship back.
Oh, buddy.
Or something along those lines. It's what?
He's got to know. He's got to do it, that is what got him to the title, is that mindset. But buddy.
He doesn't he doesn't have that mindset. You can see how anxious he is in there.
He's trying to talk himself into it, It's all he knows. Oh, boy.
Yeah. And on a depressing note, it's a great card.
Yes, it is a great card. The main event and co-main event alone. And a lot of other great stuff on the main card as well. So, Natalia Silva's fighting Andrea Lee. That'll be fun to watch Andrea Lee hopefully lose that fight. I mean, Gregory Rodriguez is on this card. It's good. It's good, folks.
It's really good.
So we're looking forward to talking to you about that one. That will, of course, be next week. In all likelihood, and God forbid something horrible happens, we will just kind of breeze past our recap of next weekend's card. Anyway, until then, make sure you find us on Twitter at Evil Greg Jackson, at Boxing Bush, and check out the Patreon and yada yada yada. And we love you, and where you're all of our best friends, and likewise. And we'll talk to you next week. And if you came here today for the Finer Points of Face Punching, you came to the right place. This has been Heavy Hands.
I'm a little concerned that you'd forgotten the tagline of your own show.
It didn't help.
Struggling to remember it at the end there.
It didn't help that I halfway through that already a butchered spiel, I got a strange hissing sound from your mic just out of nowhere, which is now gone.
That was just me voicing my disapproval.
You were hissing. Boo hiss. All right, well, it's fine.